Can you give me a synopsis of just like what that hero story looks like for something specific like Procter & Gamble?
Well, yes. Let's do things that I make sure I don't have an NDA on. Let's do Excedrin migraine. I never worked with them. That's one of my favorite ones because it was a sword that slayed my dragon. So I've had migraine since I was a kid. I'm 51, so there wasn't a lot of great migraine medicine over the counter. Like, you could get stuff from your doctor, but it would make you sleep for 24 hours and like just weird stuff. And then that came out, and I realized if I felt a headache coming on, if I took it within 2 hours, the headache went away. And, otherwise I'm in bed with a towel over my head, throwing up, all sorts of stuff. That's a company, Excedrin is a mentor that gave me these little capsules, magic pills, right? That changed my life, that slayed the dragon so that I could get my treasure. What was my treasure? Well, it was different things, different days. Sometimes it was going to my kid's t-ball game. Other times it was making the big pitch meeting without having someone else have to do it, doing a cross-country flight without feeling like I want to throw up. That's my treasure. So that's an example of it. Something like a Swiffer could be like, the treasure could be, usually their target person's like a stay-at-home mom or something like that. Back in the day anyway, kind of still is. They just, who knows?
That's right.
I don't know.
Just don't say it. Okay.
But it really isn't a super clean floor that is the treasure usually. It's something around ease. Like, I've got a baby on my arm. I've got to make dinner. I do have a part-time job. I got to figure out how to work at home. Sure, it'd be nice to just clean this kitchen floor without mop and water and soap and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of how a product can be moved around. But that does, if you really believe that that's what you're doing, then you're going to talk less about how clean the floor is. If unless you find the real treasures that people are afraid their babies are going to get sick from dirty floors, but that's not what it is.
Sure, yeah.
What they want is to have time to sit and rest.
Yeah.
And so what you're telling them is you're going to have a clean house and time.
Yeah. One of the big buzzwords right now in my world of e-commerce is UGC content. You know about user-generated content, UGC. I think that it's one of the most saturated spaces right now. Like, everyone was doing just brand content, and then somebody had the great idea of saying, if we give 1,000 people this, and then they go and post on social media, we can really blow this thing up. Worked for a few people. Now, most people who are doing it that they are saying it's working for aren't making any money doing it. The companies are blowing up, but they're like negative. I think Dr. Squatch is actually an example of a company like that. Tons of influencers, but they don't make any money from it. And they're hoping that in the long term, enough users, repeat business comes back in, and it all makes it worth their while. Okay, where am I going with this? The point of me saying that is I think about the concept of UGC content, and this whole TikTok shop generation has turned into someone holding a product up, and sometimes they give a speech along with it. Sometimes they just hold it up and they're putting out there saying, hey, buy this, buy this. I'm vouching for this product. It occurs to me that if they were telling that story instead of saying, your Excedrin story, I had this problem, this product fixed this problem for me, and now here's what I get to do on the back end of that, that the UGC would be 10 times more effective if that were the case. You'd advocate that I go to our UGC creators and tell them, hey, this is the framework I want you to use.
Which I bought. I did buy something. The only thing I've ever bought off the TikTok shop was a little microphone. I'm a content creator on TikTok, so it sounds always awful. And I owned a video production company, so it shouldn't be, but I don't care.
Yeah.
And then I didn't want to spend a bunch of money. I knew what it takes to get really good sound like we got right here. But this guy was like, it's just $3. And he's like, my sound used to be terrible, and this is everything. I was like, I'll try it for $3. It didn't work. But his story, it was his story that I was like, oh, he's like me. People have to see themselves in the story and the product, right?
Yeah.